Hi, Emily. I'm Nikki Johnson. I live in the state of North Carolina, and you and I covered the same case that was adjudicated before the North Carolina board regarding the unprofessional behavior and contact from a counselor with a client where disciplinary actions were instituted. I read the article that you cited and was thankful for it because I struggled to find any relevant empirical information or studies out there on specifically social media use and implications. So I think it validates the need for more clarity. And I looked at an extension of that same article that you cited from those two researchers, and they call out the prolific nature of social media and how it deserves much clearer guidelines. And so I think we can likely expect an increase in cases, not just in the state of North Carolina. And as we iterate and receive that clarity, perhaps there will be greater information that helps us ensure that we're not crossing the boundaries of moral or ethical principles. I did also find an article. It's dated, and I don't normally like to cite dated information, but in this case, I think it's relevant. It's from 2012, and it cites a case where a counselor found suicidal ideation from a client on social media. And the argument was that relative to beneficence and non-maleficence, that every stage of the process with what the counselor did in this case kept the client's best interest and safety in mind. That was the motivating factor. So I think we can see ways that social media interactions are sometimes important to protect the safety of our clients. However, in the case that we covered, it was clear that this counselor crossed boundaries and had inappropriate conversation and communication with the client. I did reflect a bit on counselor impairment, and I could see where portions of the inappropriate contact may have been just a impaired sense of judgment on this counselor, but obviously when she began receiving gifts and expanding that relationship, it should have become clear that it was incredibly inappropriate. I also find it interesting when I think about how, as counselors, we can lean in to biblical guidance on self-care and ways that we can avoid impairment. There's a proverb that talks about seeking wise counsel. And as we seek wise counsel, we develop a greater sense of knowledge. In our case, this counselor had received guidance from her peer group, and they clearly advised her that she was crossing a boundary, and she ignored it. So I think when we look at ways in which we might be able to mitigate impairment, not only leaning into God's word, but leveraging the relationships that we have with more experienced counselors, and use those networking relationships in ways to help us maybe have a bit more self-awareness around that impairment, or just avoid it altogether. Thank you.